Hello dear students, here I am Dhruva Patel, your biology teacher in Aaradhya class at CTM. Now in our last session we have done with the 3 class of the fungi, and in this lecture we will start with the 4th class of the fungi, that is nothing but Basidiomyces. Fine. Now the Basidiomyces is generally known as the gill fungi or bracket fungi, as their structure is like the bracket, fine, or their structure is more developed as compared to the previous 3 class. Clear? These fungi is generally known as a gill fungi or bracket fungi. Now these generally grow on a land or on a bark of the tree or in or as parasites. Fine. They grow in soil, in a bark of a tree, or they live as a parasites. Now with the next, their mycelium is more branched. फाइन. अभी देखो बेटा, हमने देखा था कि हाइफी इकट्ठा होके माइसेलियम बनाती है, तो अभी उसकी माइसेलियम बहुत ज़्यादा ब्रांच्ड बन गई है. ऑलमोस्ट थोड़ा सा हम डेवलप्ड ऑर्गेनिज्म के साथ उसको कंपेयर कर सकते हैं. फाइन. देयर माइसेलियम is more branched and we can say developed. Now बेटा उसकी हर एक सेपरेट सेल की बात करें हाइफी की, so their hyphae is a septate and their septa are porous for easy exchanging of the material between different hyphae. Their hyphae is septate and their septa are porous. Now what I will talk about the reproduction. So in this case, Basidiomyces, no asexual reproduction observed. Asexual reproduction does not occur. So beta they reproduce only by the sexual reproduction. So now we will see the sexual reproduction in a Basidiomyces. Now beta we will see the sexual reproduction in case of the Basidiomyces, and we can say that this is the only source of the reproduction in a Basidiomyces, as asexual reproduction does not observed over here. And sexual reproduction occurs by the one way only, that is known as the bisomatogamy. Somatogamy is nothing but that is the fusion between the two somatic cell, that is known as the somatogamy. Now बट यहाँ पे बेटा दो सोमेटिक सेल्स के बीच में फ्यूजन जो होता है, दे आर बिलोंगिंग फ्रॉम द डिफरेंट स्ट्रेन, यानी कि दो डिफरेंट स्ट्रेन के सोमेटिक सेल के बीच में फ्यूजन होता है, एज विच इन्वॉल्व्स फ्यूजन बिटवीन द टू सेल्स ऑफ द हाइफी ऑफ द डिफरेंट स्ट्रेन. Fine. And as we have seen in the previous class, over here the dikaryotic phase is also prolonged, means लंबे टाइम तक रहता है, and उसके बाद meiosis होके actual division होता है. Now beta later karyogamy and meiosis occurs and they becomes the basidia. Now beta this each basidium forms the 4 basidiospores exogenously by the process of the meiosis, and these basidia arranged into the fruiting body that is known as the basidiocarps, and each basidiospores gives rise to the new mycelium on germination. So beta this is nothing but whole about the sexual reproduction, and now we will move on the next topic of the basidiomycete, that is economic importance. Now we will see the economic importance of the basidiomycete, as generally they cause the diseases in a plants. Only 1 or 2 species of them are the edible. Fine. First, Ustilugo causes the smut diseases. Then Puccinia causes the rust of the wheat and other cereals diseases. Polyporus of this class decomposes the wood, while mushroom of this class is edible. And right now beta this mushroom used as a food worldwide. Fine enough, because that is the very good source of the protein. So beta this is whole about the basidiomycete. Now we will move on the last class of the fungi, that is known as the deuteromycete. Now beta last class of the fungi is nothing but known as the deuteromycete, and as this is known as the imperfect fungi, because beta no sexual reproduction observed in this class, and some of the deuteromycete resembles the characteristic of the basidiomycete, and some of resembles characteristic of the ascomycete. So actually there is no need of this separate class, because उसके बहुत सारे species इसके basidiomycete या तो ascomycete जैसे characteristic होते हैं. Clear? So first and foremost, this is known as a imperfect fungi. Because sexual reproduction is not observed. Now beta some of these resembles characteristic of the basidiomycete. While some resembles characters of ascomycetes. Okay. नाउ बेटा अगर हम उसके मोड ऑफ न्यूट्रिशन की बात करें, सो दे आर जनरली अ पैरासाइट्स, some of them are decomposers and help in a nutrient cycling, means they can convert the complex molecule in the dead and decaying material into the simple molecule, and then simple molecules can be again used by the producers. Fine. They are parasitic or decomposers and help in nutrient cycling. देन बेटा अगर हम देखें सो उसकी जो बॉडी होती है, उसकी जो माइसेलियम बॉडी होती है, दैट इज मोर ब्रांच्ड. The mycelium is branched. So beta, this is nothing but about deuteromycete, and now we'll see about asexual reproduction and economic importance of the deuteromycete. Now beta, this deuteromycete reproduce asexually only, because as a true sexual reproduction is not observed over here, and they reproduce asexually by formation of the spore that is known as the conidia. Fine. Now beta, if we will see the economic importance, then many of these are parasitic on the plants and they causes the disease only. Now first example is nothing but about the Alternaria solani, which cause early blights of the potato. Next one is the Colerotrichum falcatum, that cause red rot of sugar cane. And last one is known as the Erythrobotrytis, is predatory fungus that feed on the nematodes. So students, this is nothing but whole about the 5 class of the fungi kingdom. And now we'll move on the next kingdom, that is nothing but about plants and animals. Now beta, we'll move on the 4th kingdom of the Whitaker's classification, that is nothing but about the plant. Fine. As we have done with the 3 kingdom, that is the Monera, Protista, fungi, and this 4th one is nothing but about the plant. Now beta, one more thing कि आगे के जो 3 किंगडम हमने पढ़े हैं उसमें इतनी ग्रेट डाइवर्सिटी नहीं थी, या तो वो इतने डेवलप्ड नहीं थे. सो हमने बेटा इसी चैप्टर में उसका डिटेल क्लासिफिकेशन देखा है. बट नेक्स्ट टू किंगडम जो है दैट इज प्लांट एंड एनिमल, वो दोनों बहुत ही डेवलप्ड हैं और उसमें ग्रेट डाइवर्सिटी है. So it is not possible to study all the classes of the plant in this chapter and animal in this chapter. So beta, there is a separate chapter is given for the plant classification, chapter number 3, and for the animal that is the chapter number 5, chapter number 3 and 4. But beta, यहाँ पे हम 5 kingdom classification पढ़ रहे हैं, तो प्लांट के क्लासिफिकेशन पे नहीं जाएंगे, सिर्फ उसके कॉमन कैरेक्टरिस्टिक को देखेंगे. फाइन. सो फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट द किंगडम प्लांट इज मेड अप ऑफ द, ओवर हियर बेटा आई एम गोइंग टू राइट द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक इन अ शॉर्ट, बिकॉज एज यू नो वेरी वेल द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक ऑफ द प्लांट्स फ्रॉम योर लोअर स्टैंडर्ड्स. Fine. So these plant kingdoms contain all multicellular organisms, exceptionally some algae. Fine. Some of algae are unicellular, while all the organisms of this kingdom are multicellular. Now next one is better, they are stationary or they are steady, means they cannot move from one place to the another place. And main important character of this kingdom is that they are the autotrophs, means they can make their own food. Some of them are partial parasites, they are nothing but insectivorous plant, means they suck or they absorb the nutrients from the insect. Fine. They are autotrophs. They are autotrophs because they can make their own food by the process of photosynthesis, as they can make their own food by the process of photosynthesis. While better some of the insectivorous plants are the parasites. some insectivorous plants are parasites as they absorb nutrients from the insects. Fine. Now beta, the kingdom plants contain the cell wall in their cell, or they contain the cellulosic cell wall. They contain cellulosic cell wall. Now beta, they reserve or store the food material in form of the starch. The reserved food material, reserved food is in form of starch. Now beta, the plants passes from the two different type of the life stages, that is nothing but the sporophytic and gametophytic. Sporophytic phase is the diploid and gametophytic phase is the haploid, and they both contain alternate to each other in a life cycle of the plant, and that phenomenon is known as the alternation of generation. Fine. They pass from both sporophytic and gametophytic phase alternate to each other and that is known as the alternation of generation. Now there is a great diversity in this kingdom plant. So as we know, that is totally divided into the different class. जैसे आपने बेटा स्टैंडर्ड 9 में भी ये पढ़ा है. This plant kingdom is divided into the Thallophyta, Bryophyta, Pteridophyta, Gymnosperms and Angiosperms. So in a chapter number 3, you will study in a detail about all the classes of the plants. Over here we will study these general characteristics only. And now beta we will move on the next or last kingdom, that is the animal. Now beta we will move on the next or last kingdom of the 5 kingdom classification system, that is nothing but animal. As you know very well, there is a great diversity in the animal kingdom. So over here we will concentrate on the general characteristic only. Fine. Now beta, first and foremost, all the animals are multicellular with the eukaryotic cell. Multicellular with eukaryotic cell. Then beta, next one is they are heterotrophs, means depending on another organisms for their food. They are heterotrophs, as beta they cannot make their own food by the process of the photosynthesis. First they absorb the food from outside, then digest the food inside the body and then get nutrition from that food. They absorb food from outside and then they digest the food and get nourishment. and get nourishment from that digested food. Okay. Now beta, they have the special locomotory organs developed for the locomotion, means they are not a steady or stationary. They have special locomotory organs. Fine. Now, next they have परफेक्ट और डेफिनेट पैटर्न ऑफ द ग्रोथ, मीन्स एनिमल किंगडम में जितने भी डिफरेंट क्लास हैं, सारे क्लास के एनिमल्स की ग्रोथ पैटर्न एक डेफिनेट होती है, फिक्स होती है. दे हैव डेफिनेट पैटर्न ऑफ ग्रोथ. Then beta, they contain developed or they have the sensory control and neural control. They can recognize sense and they have developed मैकेनिज्म फॉर द न्यूरल कंट्रोल. नर्वस सिस्टम का जो कंट्रोल होता है बॉडी के ऊपर, ऐसा बेटा अभी तक कोई भी क्लास में डेवलप नहीं हुआ है. दे हैव डेवलप न्यूरल कंट्रोल. Now beta, last but not least, the reserved food material is in form of the glycogen, that is one type of carbohydrate. The reserved food material is glycogen. So beta, this is nothing but whole about the general characteristic of the animal, and now you will study in detail classification of this animal in your chapter number 4. Now in the biological classification, we have seen with the main 5 kingdom given by the scientist, that is known as the 5 kingdom classification given by the R.H. Whitaker. But beta, after that some organisms were discovered and ऐसे ऑर्गेनिजम्स डिस्कवर्ड हुए बेटा कि वो कोई भी किंगडम में फिट नहीं हो रहे थे, बिकॉज दे आर नॉट प्रॉपरली अ सेल्यूलर स्ट्रक्चर, दे आर द ए सेल्यूलर स्ट्रक्चर, मीन्स ऐसे स्ट्रक्चर मिले कि जो कम्प्लीटली सेल भी नहीं थे, तो इसीलिए कोई भी क्लास में हम उसको इंक्लूड नहीं कर सकते थे बेटा. तो इसीलिए ऐसे 3 डिफरेंट काइंड के ऑर्गेनिजम्स मिले. दे आर वायरसेस, विरोइड्स एंड लाइकन्स. सो फर्स्ट विल डील विथ द वायरसेस एंड देन विल स्टडी अबाउट द विरोइड्स एंड लाइकन्स. सो बेटा, सबसे पहले तो वायरसेस के बारे में जो डिस्कवरी हुआ है वो हम पढ़ेंगे, फिर ये कैसे सबको पता चला एंड व्हाट इज इट एक्चुअली वो पढ़ेंगे. सबसे पहले इवानोव्स्की ने 1892 में टोबैको मोज़ेक वायरस को डिस्कवर्ड किया था एंड पता चला कि इन्फेक्टेड टोबैको प्लांट में ये वायरस मिला था और वो इतना छोटा था कि बैक्टीरियल प्रूफ फिल्टर में से भी वो पास आउट हो सकता है, मीन्स दे आर स्मॉलर देन द बैक्टीरिया. Now M.W. Bazering in 1898 demonstrated that extract from the infected plant of the tobacco can cause infection in a healthy plant. मीन्स टोबैको जो भी टोबैको प्लांट इन्फेक्टेड थे उसमें से फ्लूइड को निकाल के हम दूसरे प्लांट में ट्रांसफ़र करते हैं तो वो दूसरे हेल्दी प्लांट में भी डिजीज हो जाता है, एंड दैट इज नोन एज द कॉन्टाजियम वीवम फ्लूइड, इन सिंपल लैंग्वेज दैट इज नोन एज द इन्फेक्शियस फ्लूइड. फाइन. W.M. Stanley showed that viruses could be crystallized and they are inert outside the host cell. So beta, this is about the discovery. Now we'll see general characteristic of the viruses. So first and foremost beta, virus itself means the poisonous fluid, and I don't want to say anything more because as you know very well nowadays कोरोना वायरस ने कैसे धूम मचा के रखी है, फाइन ना. Now beta, these viruses are nothing but the meaning of virus is the poison. Now one more thing beta, it is link between the living and non-living organism because they cannot live outside the body of a living organism. Outside in environment they behave as a non-living, and as they enter into the body of a living organism they use machineries of the living organisms and behave as a living one. मीन्स बेटा वो पूरा एक कंप्लीट सेल भी नहीं होता है कि उसकी खुद की मशीनरीज भी नहीं है कि वो जिंदा रह पाए. नाउ बेटा वन मोर थिंग, इट कैन बी इजीली ट्रांसमिटेड फ्रॉम वन ऑर्गेनिज्म टू द अनदर ऑर्गेनिज्म. दे आर नेवर यूजफुल फॉर एनी लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म. नहीं फॉर ह्यूमन के लिए बेटा, बट वो किसी के भी लिए कभी यूजफुल होते ही नहीं हैं. देन बेटा, द बॉडी ऑफ अ वायरस इज मेड अप ऑफ द जेनेटिक मटीरियल. इन ऑल अदर लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म द जेनेटिक मटीरियल इज DNA, बट एक्सेप्शनली इन अ वायरस द जेनेटिक मटीरियल इज RNA. Now beta, one more thing, besides this genetic material RNA, they have a coat made up of the protein. और कुछ होता ही नहीं है बेटा पूरी बॉडी में, नॉट इवन सिंगल सेल. सिर्फ जेनेटिक मटेरियल अंदर इंसर्ट हुआ होता है स्पाइरल, और उसके ऊपर प्रोटीन का कोट होता है. एंड देन प्रोटीन का जो कोट होता है बेटा, दैट इज मेड अप ऑफ द स्मॉल स्मॉल यूनिट्स that is known as the capsomere, and the whole protein coat is known as the capsid. So beta, this is nothing but whole about the viruses. Now we'll see the diagram of virus with some examples. Now example of viruses. Viruses contain two types of the genetic material, either DNA or RNA, but in most of the cases the genetic material is RNA. Now beta, besides these, in a some the genetic material is the double stranded, and in a some the genetic material is the single stranded. So over here we will see example of all different types of the genetic material. First, double stranded DNA virus is hepatitis B virus. Single stranded DNA virus is the influenza virus. Double stranded RNA virus is mycophages, and single stranded RNA viruses are nothing but TMV tobacco mosaic virus, HIV human immunodeficiency virus, and last one is the polio. So beta, this is nothing but whole about the virus. Now we'll move on the another acellular organism, that is the viroids. Now beta, next is about the viroids. This viroid was first discovered by the T.O. Diner in 1971, and they cause the potato spindle tuber diseases, and that is known as the PST viroids. Now we'll see what is these viroids actually. So these viroids are even smaller than virus. वो बेटा वायरस से भी छोटे infectious organism हैं. They are smaller than viruses. They are smaller than viruses. Then we can say that they are the smallest infectious agent in the world. They are smallest infectious agents. Then beta, their body is made up of only the thread of the genetic material RNA. Their body is made up of the thread of the RNA, nothing else. Even they lack the capsomere or capsid protein coat present in a virus. वायरस में तो बेटा फिर भी जेनेटिक मटेरियल होता है और उसके सराउंडिंग में प्रोटीन का कोट होता है. यहाँ पे वो भी नहीं होता है. दिस इज ओनली अ थ्रेड ऑफ द RNA. फाइन. दे आर made up of genetic material RNA only, fine, and they lack the protein coat. They lack protein coat. Fine beta, so this is nothing but about the viroids, and now we'll see about the last organism, that is the lichens. Now beta, last one is the lichen. See beta, this is nothing but this is the symbiotic relationship between the algae and fungi. Symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi is known as the lichen. Fine. नाउ बेटा दिस एल्गी एंड फंगाई जो है वो दोनों एक दूसरे के साथ सिम्बायोटिक रिलेशनशिप में रहते हैं और इसको कंबाइनली हम बोलते हैं लाइकेंस. नाउ फर्स्ट यू नो व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ सिम्बायोटिक रिलेशनशिप. So symbiotic relationship is nothing but this is the relationship between any two living organism in a world in which both are beneficial from each other and they live together. So यहाँ पे बेटा algae जो है that you know very well, they are the autotrophs, means they can make their own food by the process of photosynthesis, and fungi are heterotrophs. They cannot make their own food by the process of the photosynthesis. So यहाँ पे बेटा फंगाई को क्या बेनिफिट होगा वो तो आपको समझ में आ गया कि ऑटोट्रॉप्स जो है तो ये अपना फूड जो खुद से बनाएगा वो डायरेक्टली फंगाई को रेडीमेड मिल जाएगा. एंड फंगाई की बॉडी के थ्रेड जो होते हैं बेटा हाइफी, जैसे हमने अभी पढ़ा, दैट इज वेरी वेरी लॉन्ग, मीन्स दे कैन ब्यूरिड डिप इनसाइड द सॉइल. वो बहुत डेप्थ तक जा सकते हैं एंड वहाँ से मिनरल एंड न्यूट्रिएंट्स एंड वाटर एब्जॉर्ब करके लाते हैं और वो एल्गी को देते हैं. सो बाय दिस वे दे बोथ आर म्यूचुअली बेनिफिटेड. नाउ बेटा समटाइम्स दे लिव इन एसोसिएशन विथ वन अनदर इन अ क्लोज रिलेशनशिप. Even we cannot identify algae and fungal component separately. Clear? Over here beta algal components are known as the phycobiont while fungal component are known as the mycobiont. So beta अभी हमने ये भी देखा कि दोनों को एक दूसरे से कैसे बेनिफिट होता है. One more thing beta, they are the good pollutant controller और good pollutant controller भी है. इसीलिए